This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. I really, really do appreciate it because I know you can be listening to any other show, but you decided to tune in on this one. And I want you to know that, you're here for a real reason, not just because you accidentally found this, but everything really does happen for a reason. So I want to ask you, could you just take a moment and just breathe? Just take a huge inhale and a nice exhale. And just know that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out no matter what. In your business, in your relationships, all that stuff. Anyways, all right, I want to get in this interview because I'm super mega excited. I got Jessica Kupferman on today. She's got an incredible bio that I will definitely put in the show notes. I don't want to waste any time. I want you to just listen and get a handle of, what her story is and get a handle of who she is. And she's a rock star in the podcasting space. If you showed up because you know her from there, or if you don't know her yet, I promise you will get to know her. So without further ado, give a warm, awesome welcome to the one and only Jessica Kupferman.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So let's kick it off. I like to ask, what's a short story from your life that you think has like some underlying message that maybe could teach someone a thing or two?
Sure. I'm probably quite a bit older than you, so I've a few more stories, but some of the more recent ones and the things that I've been thinking about and focusing on lately is about connection, especially, but I mean, it's coincidence that it happens to be at a time when our society is very disconnected from one another, but I've had recent loss, and when I was 30, I lost my mother, and then 2 years ago, I lost my daughter, and I've been thinking a lot about things you take with you when you die. I know that's a little morbid, but one of the things that you take with you is the connections that you make with other people. And I always thought up until then, like, well, you better spend it all because you can't take it with you, or you better, live it up now because you can't take it with you. But actually, the things that you take with you are the ways that you've impacted other people. So I'm trying to be very mindful about how I connect with everyone, with micro connections when you're paying for something, all the way to the friendships and relationships that I have too. Because in both cases with my mother and my daughter, they had a lot in common. They both felt isolated and lonely, even though they died for completely different reasons. And then at the memorials, hundreds and hundreds of people talked to me about how funny they were and how much fun they had with them and how they're better people for having known them. And it just really, I don't know, I just sort of feel like if these two had known how people thought of them and loved them and how they've impacted other people, I don't know, I hope that now they're aware of the impact that they've had on other people's lives. And to answer your question, I feel like that's something that I want other people to take away from the stuff that I'm going to start talking about, not just on the show, but in general, is, not to be so distant from everyone, because I think it's a bad habit.
I do too. Very bad habit. I I can't say that I am the best person when it comes to just hanging out and surrounding myself by everybody. I certainly need to have my space, but at the same time, it's weird. We live in a world now where like we have this technological devices that actually make us kind of closer in a way, but also it's like an illusion that it's actually giving us dopamine hits from like receiving a message or
Right.
receiving some sort of like notification because of social media and whatnot. But it's not
Yeah.
like real connection.
No, it's not real connection. And in addition, like just having come from a conference and actually, this was way before conferences. My biggest pet peeve at a wedding is when you're sitting at a table with people who have to constantly take pictures of everything that's happening. They can't just enjoy it. Like, so for example, someone who's like pushing me out of the way to take pictures of the bride and groom when they've clearly paid $1,000 for a photographer. Like they don't need your Instagram instant upload of their wedding. And also I'm trying to watch the wedding and bug off. Or, in a conference, I noticed that, there are people who, before they can have a conversation or do anything, or as they're walking in, it's like everyone has a selfie stick and a phone and they're talking to their audience about the experience. Here we are at the conference. This is what it looks like. This is how it is. And there's no way to be present in your life if you're constantly talking to what looks like yourself, even though it's obviously not yourself. But those people can wait. They've waited for your content this long. They can wait another day or so to find out how it was. I just find that habit to be it's a way of creating a wall between you and your entire life. I don't think it's a good idea, I guess.
No, I I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, that wasn't a strong statement. I don't think it's a good idea, period. Not I guess. Period.
Oh, I love this personality. I love it. So I kind of want to go into what I think is your absolute area of expertise and kind of like scratch my own itch by asking you a few questions around
podcasting. Sure.
Yeah. So podcasting and also, like you've been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur and Business Insider and Social Media Examiner and Yahoo Finance. And I think some people that want to build their brand definitely are like, oh heck, like how do I get myself on that platform? How did you go about getting yourself in touch with those people?
I haven't oddly, I haven't necessarily gotten in touch with those people. I've sort of some of that stuff is a little bit accidental. Some of it is being in the right place at the right time. Like when we were featured in Entrepreneur, we didn't know till the magazine had been published. Somebody saw it and told me and called me and told me. We weren't interviewed, but we were featured as like an active community of podcasters. As far as speaking at social media, marketing world, and Blogger and things like that, to be honest with you, the trick is in Twitter to have a hashtag or an alert set up that says call for speakers. And then when you see the right conference, apply to be a speaker. In both those cases, I was on a panel. In most of those cases, I was on a panel, Logan. I think that I'm invited to do those things because of the size of the Facebook group, the fact that my business partner Elsie and I are attempting to help women have a voice in podcasting, that we want to teach them, that we want to create a space where they're not afraid to ask any question, no matter how silly they think it is. Those things are really important to us. And it stemmed from feeling like the only ones at a conference at New Media Expo in 2014. It stemmed from feeling like I had no one to ask questions when I started my own podcast without getting, an answer. And so, being featured in those places is something that I think is just a result from reaching as many people as possible. And that all started with podcasting, but it also continues with hustle, that I was constantly growing my social media. I'm constantly friending people, posting witty things, as much as possible. I try to stay connected. I'm not one of those people I might be getting a dopamine hit whenever I get a message, but I'm not necessarily one of those people that's addicted to it. So I have to make a conscious effort to go on there and connect rather than be distracted by it. I'm not really distracted by it. It's strange. But I think the most important way to have those things sort of happen is to be visible. I mean, I would love to tell you like, well, first I did this and then I did this, but I'm sort of an accidental leader. So I might not be the right person to like inspire your audience, because I only wanted to create a safe space. Like, I didn't know it was going to be 12,000 people. I didn't know we would have to create rules. I kind of wanted them to govern themselves. Like, Elsie and I didn't really want to be the bosses of anything, but someone has to be, and it's our group. And so it was something that both of us had to consciously step into, rather than be like, I want all the fame and glory. We sort of like, we're like, oh, I guess we'll have to have some fame and glory now. Okay, I guess we'll do it. It wasn't something that we had premeditated, if that makes sense.
No, I totally. So, all right, what kind of leads me to is the question of a core why, because it's clear to me that you want to stand out for women, and you want to stand up for being able to just be a leader, to maybe, even though you say you're not a leader, I think you're a leader, but at least be a part of a new movement. So why? Like, I really want to hear, like, why is it that Jessica Kupferman wants to do that so badly?
Why is it that I wanted to do what so badly? Sorry.
Stand up for women, do this women's movement, and like, be a hero for them.
Yeah. In this particular, as a whole, I don't necessarily consider myself a women's hero. In this particular space, and actually, since I started doing anything in the digital space, whether it was web design, social media marketing, I've always noticed a tendency for women to shy away from tech. And I hate that old, like, oh my God, I don't know how to use anything. Like, my husband is the one that programs the VCR. Like, you're probably too young to know what a VCR is, but, they can't work their own voicemail.
I'm 28 years.
Oh, you are? I don't know why, but you look so young. You look so young, though. All right, so 28. All right, so you know what a VCR is. All right, fair enough. So yeah, so I don't like women who act like that. I mean, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like that assumption that we can't handle technology. And I know that podcasting is a great way to get one's voice out. And I know that tech is a huge hindrance to that. And I know that I'm very good at making tech seem less intimidating. So, I really just wanted to show people, like, hey, just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't, you can make this really simple. You can have a microphone and a computer and then upload it. It's really easy. It's more complicated to like fiddle with your phone bill online than it is to do a podcast. So if you can do that, you can do this. And, I think women have a lot of stories. I think that at the time I started podcasting, it was only like 13% of women had shows, as opposed to the whatever other percentage that is of males. And I just felt like that seemed off to me. So I wanted to try and champion more voices in this space, because I think women are amazing storytellers and amazing interviewers. And I don't think something like the technology should hold people back from getting their messages out.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely. That is so cool. So
thank you.
I really love that, because I know for a fact that technology is so cool, but it can be so frustrating if you're not understanding it. I want to ask you, what do you think is the key to happiness?
Oh my goodness. I am still trying to find that out, but let me see. So far, I have decided that the key to happiness is, I want to, well, there's so many answers. What do you think is, I'm curious. You've probably heard that. Have you asked that question a lot? Like, what's the best answer you've been given? I'm just curious while I think about it for a minute, because I'm still working on that. I think that's the most impossible thing to find, actually, is true happiness. But
yeah, I actually asked a question on my Facebook. Do you think people are addicted to pain? And the reason why I asked that I know. And not pain like
I know what you
just like
mean. Yeah.
yeah, pinching
Misery.
yourself.
Misery. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that the only way to be truly happy for me is like to feel like I did a good day's of work. Like I
Mm.
can't truly settle down until I know that I went through something that I feel like going through and coming out the other end. So like fulfillment to me is actually the word I like to use more so, like meaning that during the day I did something that I didn't feel like doing, or during the day um, I did a chore that I usually am not up to doing. So that to me is more.
Yeah, I mean, fulfillment and happiness are different, right? Because I feel fulfilled often. I feel fulfilled when I have someone tell me, "Thank you for creating this space or for helping me with my show or thank you for everything." Like those things are all very fulfilling. It's also really fulfilling when like I volunteer at my toddler's school or I used to be fulfilling when I help friends move, which I would never do now. Uh, but like, just helping people is very fulfilling, but does that necessarily equal happiness? Because somewhere in there, you have to be really happy with who you are, maybe what you look like, certainly who you've decided to spend your life with. Um, like, is there such a thing as complete happiness, or are you supposed to be satisfied, in spite of whatever life has given you? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did. I mean, at this point in my life's journey, that was a really hippie thing for me to say, but whatever. At this point in my life's journey, I am working on acceptance and being the best person that I can be mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I think in the last couple years, and maybe ever since I've been an adult, I've not been focusing on that because I've had a lot of like fires to put out. And when one goes out, another blazes up. So I'm currently not in that position. And for once, I'm just like, well, what does spiritual health and physical health and mental health look like? And how can I like actively pursue those things? It's something I've never done before. So get back to me in like a year and maybe I'll have a better answer. We'll see. It's a tough journey.
I think you're the first person that's like, that I think I've had on my show that's actually said like I think it's super cool that you don't have an answer. And that's actually why I think depression is sort of a thing that correlates with business. Why? Because
Definitely.
I think that people actually create businesses out of like a deep question that they have, and they're constantly trying to answer it. Mm-hmm. And if they just knew the answer right away, they would probably have a failed business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think people create their own businesses because they have a desire to do something new and different and don't want someone else telling them what to do also. And that's, I mean, but that's not, once you get into it and you're like, I have an idea, I want to work for myself, I'm going to start my own business. Then you realize like, if your business is flailing, it could be because you have a character flaw. And then all of a sudden this business is all about self-realization. Something you never expected was going to happen is that you have to actually ask inner questions and learn about yourself. So that can be a surprise, I think, for a lot of people. But my first instinct when you said the key to happiness was what happiness? But which is a bad instinct and why I hesitated, because I think happiness might be overrated. I think the quest is not for happiness, but for peace, for being peaceful inside, for being okay with everything that's happened to you, with your current life situation, with your dreams and goals, with the way you feel, with the way you look. I think peaceful is better than happy, because happy is almost ignorant. You can't necessarily, happiness to me is a word that feels like hooray. And I don't think that's the goal of life. I think the goal of life is to be, all right, I'm cool with this. We're cool. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense, 100%.
Yeah.
It's odd in a weird way to be in a place where it's not cool to be in maintenance mode though. You know what I mean? Like
that's true. Yeah.
Most people are like, gotta progress, and so they go in the gym and they're like, I gotta lose weight or I gotta build muscle. and who would ever want to just be average or mediocre? But I actually almost think that one of the posts that I had that went viral on LinkedIn was, "Hey, just because today was an okay day doesn't mean you suck."
Yeah.
Like, and so I think we just live in a world where it's like there's got to be all these celebrations, and it's easy when someone gets married, and it's easy when someone gets engaged, or it's easy when someone's celebrating all this weight loss, but it's really hard to just like be like, hey, I'm like cool with life right now.
Yeah. If you're okay with life right now and your current situation, then I think that's the goal, because life is constantly changing. So once you achieve so-called happiness, especially in the gym or with weight, something's going to change. It just has to. What if you get to the perfect weight and size and then God forbid you break an ankle or something? Well, there goes your dream of happiness. Does that mean you can't be happy now because you can't work out? Like, or what if it is money? How much money do you need to be happy? Is that enough? Is that enough? Is that enough? Like, none of it is as good as being okay with where you are whenever that is, I think. So yeah, that gym thing that's a perfect analogy, because you're right. No one wants to be mediocre, but when are you like, yep, that's my last rep, I'm done? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're never done. I'm done. I've achieved happiness. The end.
So we've gone down
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I just want to ask a few more questions, just to kind of like give people real value for tuning in today, and some things that maybe they could do to really like get out of that loophole that they might feel like they're in, because I think really it comes down to narrative and the stories we tell ourselves. And so these little last three questions may help them get out of that, unfortunately, that hole that we're sometimes stuck inside of. So I want to ask you, what is one of your favorite books and why?
Books. I used to read a lot of fiction, and then I started reading a lot of nonfiction. Um, and I have weird I have weird feelings about both. If I had to choose a fiction book, I like the stuff by Wally Lamb. Specifically, there's this book called I Know This Much Is True about twins, and one of them schizophrenic. It's fascinating. I really like psychological, in-depth psychological looks at stuff, and that was a fascinating book. Those characters were fascinating. Also, I like to read celebrity biographies, and probably that's the same thing, just because like you see these people, but you never know what they're thinking, and so a book is kind of like an insight into what they're thinking. So one of my favorite ones was Janis Joplin's. That was fascinating. Tina Fey's was really interesting. Some of them are just fluff, like obviously a celebrity writing a book to write a book, but some of them are like really in depth and interesting. And so I usually go for books like that. As far as like a favorite book, the one I've read, this is so bizarre. The one I've read over and over and over and over is everything I learned in everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. That book feels like a hug. It just is a book that makes, as a kid and even as a young adult, I read it a lot, feeling like, all right, well, things can be terrible and funny at the same time. And everything can be bad and good and this and that. And so reading those stories and rereading them, it was kind of like it was a book that just made me feel like no matter what was happening, it would be okay. So I like that one.
I love it. I love all those recommendations. I want to ask you just one book you think out of all those.
One book out of all those books. Hold on, let me just think for a second. I gotta look at my bookshelf. One book out of all the books. Oh, it's so difficult. Probably the fiction one. I Know This Much Is True. Wally Lamb is a great book. It's fascinating character. All his books are great, but yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I just know the paradox of choice is a real thing. When we give people 5 choices, they take nothing. So I
It's
really
like asking who your favorite singer is. It's like, well, it depends on what mood I'm in. It depends on what I'm trying to learn. Like there's books are like a never-ending sea of knowledge. So it's like books are so hard. I find that question to be harder than like if you could have 3 people at a dinner party. That one I could answer off the top of my head, believe it or not. But books
okay,
are
what's that?
okay. 3 people I would have at a dinner party. Off we go. Okay, Lucille Ball. They can be dead. That's my rule. Lucille Ball. I think I would like to talk to Gandhi. Already a weird dinner. What would he eat? And I think my grandfather, because I'm named after him and I've never met him. And he was in World War II and he died when my father was 16. And I would just love to hear about what his life was like because he was the youngest of 5. And my father, he remembers a little bit, but he was 16 and therefore, not paying attention a lot. You just take your parents for granted. I think when you lose one young, it's like you lose a lot of stories that you were never told. So that's my dinner party. Do you have a dinner party off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I've been digging.
It's hard, right?
Yeah. It is tough, but I think I pretty much got it. I've been really digging, Tom Bilyeu stuff. I'd really like to sit down with him.
Okay.
I think it's fascinating. I also think that I would really like to sit down with Brian Schulman. He's a guy on LinkedIn. Really love his work. He's one of those people that can just totally change your mood. And then I would love to sit down with just because I think that they're interesting and they do things that are just crazy and weird. I really think James Altucher.
Oh, he is fascinating. You're right. He would make a great dinner guest. And Oprah, too. I forgot Oprah, but she'd make a good dinner guest, too. Those are James Altucher I want to just ask him about that hairdo. Like what's the strategy behind the hairdo exactly? And then I think
it's natural.
It's definitely natural, but it doesn't have, but I have curly hair and I use product. I'm just wondering, I know this is a very not, inconsequential thing, but it would distract me to the point where I wouldn't be able to serve food unless I knew like what's going on with the hair. And then I could move on.
I love it. All right. Well, we're coming down to the end. Last question. I know that everyone that's listening right now, I'm going to plug in where you can find more of Jessica in the show notes and be found if any of this interests you to get connected with her. Please do. But the last question I have is I really am scared about people who listen to this podcast as self-help jargon and not actually doing anything with it. So what's one piece of homework you'd like to give the audience?
The piece of homework I would like to give the audience is take one personality test and learn and actually, if you can, apply what you've learned about yourself to your life. There's a few that I like. I like Strengths Finder. I like Sally Hogshead's Fascinate. I like the Enneagram. And I like, I forget the name of it, but it's the one where you learn that you're like an ENTJ or an INFP or whatever. I forget the name of that one, but that's a good one too. Just knowing these things about yourself, I think will help you, especially if you're at a crossroads, make a decision that's going to be really best for who you are at your core. So that's my homework. One personality test. See how it goes.
Hey, I'm going to do it today. Sweet.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah, 100%. You can never, self-discovery and awareness is everything. But gosh, Jessica, this has been amazing.
Thank you.
I know that we're going to stay connected. I can't wait until this goes live and we see what sort of feedback goes out. But until then, I guess this is a farewell.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. This has been really fun.
Thank you, Jessica. Likewise. See ya.
There'll be girls across the nation that'll eat this up. Babe, I know that it's your soul, but could you bottle it up? Get down to the heart of it. No, it's my heart. Your shit out of your luck. Don't make me tell you again. Woo! Love, love, love. Hey. Love, 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 love.
Oh, wow. You made it to the very end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. with your host, Logan Tyler Nelson. To make it to the end? Gosh, that doesn't happen very much nowadays. I mean, especially with the constant distraction. So, I appreciate all of the efforts that you just took out of your day to make it to the end. And if you hit that subscribe button and leave a review, you would have no idea what that would mean to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to hit that subscribe button. And if you leave a review, check it out. Just screenshot it, send it to me, and I'd love to host your review out on the show. But don't ever forget, like I say, you matter and you're enough.
Love is the main reason for how all this happened. Love for all my fans, love for all the shows. Got love for all my memories, no matter where I go. Even if I'm out to nothing, I know there's always something. It's not a fitness test, but it'll always